The bride took a phone call at the wedding. She left the wedding and went straight to the toilet. She fumbled around in the toilet, a few parts in her hands to assemble a gun. Wedding dress with a sniper rifle. It's beautiful, but just as she's about to pull the trigger, she was shocked because the target was her ex-husband, Jack. It was the first time she'd ever missed. As a child, she witnessed her father being killed by an enemy. She fought through her grief, but they wouldn't stop. They were shining a hammer at her. Suddenly, he bowed his head. He didn't kill her, but he used her as a moneymaker. That's when Jack showed up. He's here to kill the perverted customer. The customer's scream startled the people outside the door. Laura killed him instead. Jack was surprised. He's the head of the hit squad. He thought Laura was young, but she was cool. So he took her back. He took her enemy's henchmen and brought them in. As a teaching tool for her, he groomed her while he helped her get revenge. They spent 10 years together. After growing up, Laura became the best assassin in the organization. This day during training, everyone was tied with sandbags and thrown into the river. They all came up. Laura was the only one missing. Jack jumped in to save her. After landing, he gave her artificial respiration. But at that moment, Laura smiled mischievously. She was faking her drowning. She had fallen in love with Jack. Jack also fell in love with her. They agreed to leave here together. But Laura still has a wish to fulfill. She wants revenge. She went to her enemy's house. Her enemy's face is covered in blood, and he is crying for mercy. Laura is closing in, but that's why she was surrounded. Laura was tied up. The enemy looked at her feet. He pulls out his hammer and smashes it on the ground. He said he didn't kill Laura's father. Then who did? He was about to say something, but there was movement behind him. One of his men went out to check. The next thing he knew, he was bleeding to death. Jack reappears and shoots them again. Finally, he and his enemy draw their guns at the same time. When he wasn't looking, Jack shot first. Laura was rescued and sad, although he was a real enemy, but she had let go of her hatred. She just wanted to be with Jack. They would soon get married and stop being killers. They were going to go on their honeymoon, but Jack took a call. His brother Sam had been captured. He had to go save her. But when Laura saw him again, he's dead. He secretly found out who Laura's real enemy was. He went to get revenge, but he got caught. He was killed by his enemy. Laura was furious. She took her gun and went after her enemy. She killed everyone who stood in her way. She shot and changed bullets in one fluid motion. She grabbed his head and pulled the rope and broke out the window. Again is destroyed. Laura was surrounded by the police. When she woke up again, it didn't look like a prison. It's more like a hospital. But what's strange is why the doctors and nurses are wearing gas masks. There's a secret base in Korea that holds the most dangerous prisoners. Laura was sent here because she had killed too many people. What awaits her is not death but plastic surgery. Laura faked a fainting spell. She got out when the staff wasn't looking, but she didn't get very far before she frowned. There were people learning ballet, people learning how to cook. It looked like a school. The students are all women, and people are watching her. Laura takes a hostage and continues to break into the makeup classroom. Jenny says she knows the way. She begs Laura to take her with her. They get to the rooftop. Jenny says the only way is to jump over. Laura doesn't believe her. She rushes out alone. At that moment, the pursuers arrived. Laura had to stab the hostage several times. She also followed and jumped out. But at that moment, she was shot by someone downstairs. It turns out that this is the base of Korean beauty agents. Jenny's in charge of it. They want to recruit Laura. They wanted to recruit Laura and give her the best life possible if she completed her mission. Laura tried to resist. The instructor took out an ultrasound. Laura is pregnant with Jack's child. For the sake of the baby and to avenge Jack's death, Laura started to cooperate with the training, whether it's fighting or firearms. Laura always comes first. Jenny was very satisfied. Laura gave birth to her daughter and completed all the tests. They gave her a new identity and a new address. She lived her life and took on missions in secret. On moving day, Andy, the neighbor, kept talking to him. All he said was some very corny stuff. Laura didn't want to talk to him. She calls Jenny. She wants to find out more about Andy. Jenny said she was fine. He lost his wife 2 years ago and has recently gotten over his grief. He sold his house and started living again. Laura let her guard down, but Andy was very nice to her. He saw how hard it was for her with the kids. He would stall the bus driver and wait for her to arrive slowly. She always ran into Andy when she was grocery shopping, and her daughter was very fond of him. Laura has always lived on the edge of life and death. She had never had such a warm life. After a performance, their hands touched, but just then Laura's phone rang. It was Jenny. She had an assignment. She had to entrust Andy with the care of her daughter. She rushed to the mission. This time, her partner was her best friend from the base. They used a beauty ploy. The target was soon hooked. Laura stole the phone and pretended to go to the bathroom. She immediately transferred the data using a hairpin, but when she returned, her best friend was taken hostage. To save her, Laura pretended to return the data. After a fight, the target fell down with serious injuries. She took her friend and ran away. But the target was still alive. Her friend saved her life, but she was seriously injured herself. Laura took her to the pickup point and asked Jenny to take her to the hospital, but she said coldly, "Go back to base and process the data." Laura suddenly realized, to Division, agents are tools. They're not as important as information, and she could be sacrificed by Division at any time. Then someone had to be able to take care of her daughter. She thought of Andy. When she returned, Laura accepted him. The next day she reported to the instructor that she was getting married. The instructor sighed. "Why are they all like this?" She agreed to the marriage. She hired a lot of friends and family at Laura's expense, but she didn't expect to be on duty at the wedding. Laura was wearing a wedding dress and holding a sniper rifle. She was aiming at the target's head, but just then the target turns around. It was Jack. Laura missed. When she returned to the wedding, Laura looked at her husband in front of her. All he could think about was the way Jack had looked when he lost it. Was she really mistaken? With his life back, Jack immediately sent someone to check the wedding surveillance that day. He didn't recognize Laura's face after her plastic surgery. He just instinctively felt so familiar. That's when his men also found out the woman's guests were all paid actors. Jack nodded his head. He guessed it. But what I never expected was, he then said, the guests on scene outside are all actors too. While Andy went to the phone, Jack met Laura. He recognized Laura by her eyes even though she'd had a facelift. Laura said she was now in love with Andy. Jack took the gun and left quietly, but the next day Laura received a recording from him. It turns out that Andy was sent by Jenny to spy on her. Love is all a lie. At this time, Jenny also found out about their secret meeting. She warned Laura to hurry up and finish the job. "Don't forget you have a daughter." Jenny threatens her with her daughter. Laura was disappointed. She called Jack. "Someone is going to kill you." He caught her before she even left the house. Division suspected Laura, but just as she was about to be taken away for investigation, a motorcycle hit her head-on. The rider raised his gun and fired. A large group of accomplices came to meet her. Jenny escapes. Laura finds out that it was Jack who came to her rescue. After being rescued, Laura thinks of her daughter. She rushed home, but when she got downstairs, Andy was still holding her daughter, but her daughter was still dead. In a fit of rage, she returned to the base. She confronted Jenny about why she did it. Jenny didn't answer. She turned on the surveillance. It turns out the killer is Sam. Andy warned him, the girl is Jack's child. That's when the call came from Jack. Andy shouted desperately, "This is your daughter." But after a brief silence, Sam hung up the phone. Not long after that, Sam saw Laura on the next balcony. He smiled and pressed the remote. Why would Jack do this to his own flesh and blood? Laura went to Jack in anger. She was once again a vengeful villainess. She drove her car into Jack's supergroup. They were no match for Laura. Jack was waiting upstairs. At gunpoint, Jack said something strange. "I loved you, but I can't love you anymore." What was he thinking? Laura didn't want to hear his explanation. She threw away her gun and replaced it with a knife. She wanted revenge for her daughter. They fought from the room to the window. They fought from the air conditioning unit to the floor. Jack was gradually being rescued by the boys. Laura was also hit by a car. In pain, she didn't forget her revenge. She sat on the hood and drove the car backhanded. She swoops onto the bus. She kills some of her men. She was pinned down by Jack. Laura cuts off the driver's hand in a heartbeat. The bus goes out of control and crashes over. Faced with the vengeful ex, Jack finally revealed the truth. He is Laura's real enemy. The man she thought was her enemy was just a killer he bought. That's why the enemy frowned when he saw him, and that's why he's in a hurry to kill. But this also let Laura know that the real killer is someone else. So he framed his arch-enemy. He created the illusion of death. He lured Laura to the murder. He got a big advantage. He thought Laura was dead. Instead, she was recruited by the Secret Service. After the reunion, Jack was still thinking of ways to use her. Knowing the truth, Laura no longer believed in any feelings. She became a completely evil girl.